Welcome class. Today we are going to learn about the unit circle. The reason it is called a unit circle is because the radius is 1 from the origin to a point on the circle. Therefore, the 4 coordinates are as follows. For example, we're going to draw an angle in the first quadrant. So the A value would be cosine and the B value would be sine. So we all know SOHCAHTOA, and sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. From this right triangle, we can derive these functions.
Once upon a time, there was the top right quadrant, and her name was Positive Polly. She was a really happy quadrant. She was always positive in every way, shape, and form. Positive Polly had such a nice life. She went to a really good school, aka UCR. She had beautiful plants, or plant, and the sun was always shining. She was always so happy, and she was never sad about anything, never felt left out. Dun dun dun! Dramatic music plays in the background. All of a sudden, something really odd happened to Positive Polly, something that she wasn't used to. She, always being by herself, always being independent, like the positive quadrant she was, started feeling sad and lonely. And for what reason? The world will never know. Just kidding, you will know. 1 second. Okay, so I'm about to explain the breakdown of Positive Polly, which is basically part of the unit circle. It's the top right quadrant, and that would also be considered quadrant number 1. So there are 3 main degrees inside of quadrant number 1, which start off with 30 degrees, and then you have 45 degrees, 60 degrees, and then lastly is 90 degrees. But basically what you want to do when you're drawing out the first quadrant is you want to skip 30 degrees. And then when you're going from 60 to 90, you want to skip 30 degrees. So anytime you hit a major axis, you want to skip 30 degrees, but then the rest of them you want to add 15. It's a little bit confusing, I know. So basically, you have different degrees, and you're also going to have different radians. So what you have is pi over 6 as your first one, pi over 4, pi over 3, then lastly pi over 2. Just like you have different degrees and different radians, you're going to have different values, as you can see. These are just the values for the first quadrant, and that's just the order for the first quadrant. But as you can see on your x-axis, you're just going to have 1, 0, which is just like a normal value, but the other ones obviously have radicals in them. But yeah, that's just for your first quadrant. For your other ones, you're going to have different values. But I'm just going to explain how to see something as cosine and as sine. So your x value, whatever you have, is you're going to be your cosine value. Your y value is going to be your sine value, and that's just always how it's going to be. It never changes. So if you're asked for what's your cosine value of pi over 3, then you're going to have to put rad 3 over 2. Yeah. So then your tan for it would be your y value over your x, which is your sine over your cosine, which is a little bit confusing, but that's just rise over run. And then you're going to have opposites, which are cosecant, secant, and cotangent. So for your cosecant, it would be 1 over sine. For your secant, it would be 1 over cosine. And then for your cotangent, it's going to be cosine over sine, which is opposite. So yeah, that's just how you break them down. So some key facts to remember about quadrant 1 / Positive Polly, which is the name that we gave her. There are just 2 main ones that I wanted to touch on. So your first one is it's always going to be positive. there's never going to be a negative value in positive poly or your quadrant 1. Just as you saw in the values, they're always positive. And then the second key fact is it sets the base for all of the different unit circle quadrants. So like whatever you have in your first quadrant is kind of going to be reflected into your second quadrant and your third quadrant, but you will see that later on. Okay, so now that you guys have gotten the basics of what a quadrant is, or what the first quadrant is, we're going to go back to the life of positive poly. So she was so confused because she's never been sad before, but she thought long and hard about why she was sad because she's never felt this way, and she finally figured out the reason. She finally realized that there was a bigger part to her life, that she was just one tiny quadrant in the whole unit circle. And she just realized that she can't always be alone, that she needed her friends and she needed her other halves. But where were they? She didn't know who they were. So she finally decided enough is enough. I'm not going to be on my own anymore. I'm going to do something that I've never done before, aka find my missing pieces. She didn't want to be alone anymore. She didn't want to be just positive poly on her own. She wanted to be part of a unit circle. So as you can see here, positive poly is kind of in the middle of nowhere with her little pack and her bright curly red hair, and she has also a baseball cap on, which is UCR's cap, and she decided to invite all of you guys to go find her friends with her. So stick around to see what happens next.
Hi, I'm Phil. I'm the second quadrant of the unit circle. So a little bit about me. I have a twin sister. Her name is Lil, and her and I are best friends. We hang out all the time. So we just did whatever siblings do every day. We hung out, we talked, we gossiped, we played with each other, basketball, baseball, that stuff. Did math, that's pretty fun, with Dave. Shout out to Dave. So I make up 1/4 of the unit circle, while Lil makes up the other quarter. And together we are both the second and the fourth quadrant. Her and I are basically mirrors of each other, so I'm the yin and she's the yang. But one day she disappeared, and I have no idea where she is. So right now I'm trying to look for her, and I'm recording this right now to make sure that if anyone does find her, they have a reference, since I'm just a mirror of her in a way. So there's 3 degrees of importance in my unit circle. So it's going to be 120 degrees, 135 degrees, and 150 degrees. And this is in between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. So the radians for these are going to be pi over 2, and then 2 pi over 3, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 6, and pi. So the coordinates for these is going to be 0, 1 for pi over 2, and for 2 pi over 3 it's going to be -1/2 and root 3 over 2. And then for 3 pi over 4 it's going to be negative root 2 over 2 and root 2 over 2. For 5 pi over 6, it's going to be negative root 3 over 2 and 1/2. And for pi, it's just negative 1 and 0.
Hello, my name is Negative Nelson, and I am the third quadrant of the unit circle. Up until this point in my life, nothing has ever been positive. As you can see by my facial expression, I am very negative. Also, I am part demon. Sometimes, I become so negative that I wish the entire unit circle would just light on fire and dissolve into a burnt crisp. My life is so dreary and boring. I even live in a box. Doesn't that sound exciting? I have no siblings. However, I do have a dad and a mom. My dad's name is Sign. He is also negative. My mother is also negative, and her name is Cosine. A few days ago, I had broken my wrist. How unfortunate. The doctors needed to take an x-ray of my body, and this is what the x-ray looked like. Inside were my negative values of 210, 225, 240, and in radians, 7 pi over 6, 5 pi over 4, and 4 pi over 3.
Hi, my name is Lil, and I am the fourth quadrant of the unit circle. The first three quadrants of the unit circle have gotten together, but they seem to be missing a piece. And that piece is me, the fourth quadrant. There was one quadrant specifically that I was looking for, and that was my brother Phil. He was very upset. But what he didn't know was that I was looking for him too, that I was incapable of finding him because I was sick. He's my brother, my other half, my yin to my yang. We were both looking in the wrong directions, and we needed something to bring us together. What thing to bring us together better than the unit circle? The unit circle made everyone happy, even Negative Nelson. Maybe not that much, but he was still kind of happy. Although the unit circle is like one big happy family, each quadrant has their part, and my part is the fourth quadrant. So let me talk a little bit about myself. I'm made up of 4 main degrees and 4 main radians, that being 270 degrees, 300 degrees, 315 degrees, and 330 degrees. My main radians are 3 pi over 2, 5 pi over 3, 7 pi over 4, and 11 pi over 6. I also have x and y coordinates, x being positive and y being negative, and those include 0, negative 1, 1/2, negative square root of 3 over 2, square root of 2 over 2, and negative square root of 2 over 2, and the last but not least, square root of 3 over 2 and negative 1/2.
Overall, we all started by ourselves. We started from the bottom, and now we're here. #Drake. But yeah, we were all by ourselves, and then look where we are. We all came together as one unit circle. Positive Polly, Phil, Negative Nelson, and Lil. We all found our way back to each other. And everyone's happy, except for Negative Nelson. He doesn't really count, but oh well. We all have our different attributes, and together we make up
the unit circle, I guess.
Oh my god, shut up, Nelson, you ruined everything! Ugh!